coming back. We have also to have more issuers. Confidence has to come back also. As you know, and for the first time, at least 4 companies defaulted on Sukuk. I mean, one in Kuwait, Investment Dar, one in the United States, one in Saudi Arabia, and some other companies are restructuring Sukuk, like Nakhil in Dubai. So, I mean, that could affect also the confidence. But the good news is to see that sovereign issues coming back, as I mentioned before. It will pave the way to developing Sukuk again. We have seen a lot of confidence from investors. I mean, the buy in Sukuk was largely oversubscribed. The RAC one was also very much oversubscribed. We have seen beginning of this year in this region, Indonesian Sukuk also very well received by the market. So now it's up to the large companies to come back to the market. You mentioned Saudi electricity, but Saudi electricity was in local currency, which is a different market from the US dollar one. As BNP Paribas, we have a lot of mandates, and we are just ready, waiting for the right time and the right window to come to the market. But yes, we need investors, confidence from investors. Pricing is also, or return, in fact, is one of the main reasons for investors to come back, of course, with the risk assessment. We need also, maybe it's also from the borrowers' side also to reduce the cost of issuing a Sukuk. I mean, all the legal costs, the cost of the structure, is maybe to reduce a little bit more and to put some pressure on our legal advisors. But I think the momentum is coming back. I mean, just we are a nascent industry. We have not been immune from the crisis, but as mentioned by Dr. Al-Shar, we are an ethical industry, and this is really our strength.
Danny, you've got your foot in probably more Asian markets than anybody else. Are your skills honed here in the domestic Islamic capital market easily transportable across the Maybank empire?
Well, excuse me, our presence, obviously, as you mentioned, is across Southeast Asia, significantly in Indonesia, and we have now presence in Vietnam and also Pakistan. But yes, predominantly, given the fact that the Malaysian capital markets is also the largest in the world at the moment in terms of Sukuk outstanding and issuances. Naturally, the bulk of our work is here and domestically, but we are seeing a tremendous interest also, especially out of Indonesia, where interestingly they don't call it Islamic finance, they call it Sharia compliant finance. And with that, I'd just like to raise a point about your question earlier regarding liberalization movements in, you did mention Indonesia, but also Hong Kong, Singapore, and so on. And it is interesting to note, as you went through your list in Southeast Asia, these are key financial centers whose population base are not necessarily Muslim. Like the bulk of them are not. Take Singapore and Hong Kong. So why are they doing what they are doing? And you even mentioned Thailand. Apart from what Badlisyah was saying, that it's not just about attracting GCC money into this region, but Islamic finance is certainly beginning to be a force to be reckoned with. And where do we go from here? That was your question. I believe that currently we have this significant opportunity as practitioners as a whole, this entire room, to really lead in terms of global leadership. I think the world is crying out for alternative models. Your countryman on Capitol Hill is hell-bent in curbing executive pay at banks. and somehow they think that that would miraculously change things. I doubt it. But what we would need...
We'll all be moving to the Gulf or Malaysia.
I guess what we all need really is to show the world that perhaps Islamic finance or Sharia compliant finance, as my friends in Indonesia mention it, is having the right standards. I think Badlisyah mentioned a lot about regulatory framework being in place, but I think our challenge is to have a uniform standard that is not perhaps seen to be changing, especially for practitioners, issuers and investors who do not necessarily understand the full nuances of the theology or the theological aspects of what Islamic finance is all about. Dr. Mohammed mentioned about the tawarruk issue. Most people, perhaps most investors, do not understand what is the issue there. Especially, isn't it all about fixed income, for example? What's wrong with fixed income sukuk? And that is what the practitioners want, that is what the demand wants. So the challenge for us really is to have, I suppose, unity in providing a standard regulatory framework that would then set the base to provide the world, I suppose, with a good alternative financial capital market. And I think the vacuum also that would fill is because even in conventional markets, there isn't a standard global regulator. There isn't any global regulations. I mean, the CFTC is talking about now and how they want to curb commodity trading and so on. I already mentioned about executive pay rises. So perhaps this is where us as Islamic practitioners can raise to the challenge. And, let's, apart from exchanging cards today, as you asked us to, perhaps we could really sit down and think and really make conscious effort on how Islamic finance can raise to the fore to provide that, to fill up that vacuum in global capital market regulation.
Excellent. Now the organizer has just given me the quiet hand signal that you, the audience, should be asking a few questions as opposed to me. So I think there are some nice young people with microphones. If you have a question and you'd like to ask it verbally, please raise your hand now. I know the panelists would like to address that. If you had anxiety about asking your question personally, there are those red cards to write them on, and then somebody will bring them and we'll read them. So if there's a question, I can't see quite any hands up. I'm sure I could call on somebody randomly. So we're here we have a question. Dr. Humayun, not a random call. I was worried that we're too decaffeinated.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I actually decided to ask a question because no one was asking. Very simple question. We have been referring to the effect of financial crisis on Islamic banking or on the wider financial markets. And it has been raised in this session and the previous keynote speech as well, that we would be looking into the opportunities which this financial crisis offers to Islamic banking and finance. And my question to the panel is, what kind of opportunities are there for Islamic banking and finance during and after this crisis?
All right, gentlemen, what opportunities do we have during and after the crisis? The first brave man to go for his mic.
Well, I think the first opportunity we have here is basically arising from this crisis. I think there is more openness on the part of the so-called the government of non-Islamic nation and also the regulator towards Islamic finance. Despite the fact that there is this kind of crisis, there's a lot of opportunities. One of which I think in these GCC countries, for example, and also in some part of Asia, there's a lot of mega infrastructure projects being planned, and all this need money. And on the demand side, despite the fact that the sovereign wealth of the GCC nation has shrunk by almost 25%, and also they call investments house, but there is still a lot of investors out there who are looking for a product which comply with their Sharia requirement, which is Islamic product. So I think on demand side, supply side, there is still a lot of opportunities out there.
All right?
Let me just add to that. The biggest benefit to Islamic finance from this crisis